Welcome back to Beauty Mark. So today I have Maria once again on my podcast. Welcome back, Maria. How are you doing?
Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Excited to have you back. So for those of you guys that did hear Maria's story on the last podcast, today is about relationships and Maria, so let's go into it. Let's just get into it. So kind of last time you kind of left us on a little, on the edge of, okay, well, there's so much more to share. So today, can you share a little bit more of your story?
I was in my first real serious relationship I was about 19, 20. By the time I was 21, I was married. And the way we were raised, how whatever was bothering us when we were growing up, whatever our issues were, they are going to reveal themselves in a relationship. That's when the real you comes out. That's when the history comes out.
Yes.
And you don't even know what hit you. So here I am, 21. I had been, abused as a child, as I had told the story before. So I am expecting this guy who is going to love me and we are going to have a great marriage. No. I met him in a church environment. He was the youth leader at a church. Needless to say, he had a double life. I remember after I got married, which I received no premarital counseling, I had no idea. There was no test taking or let's see how prepared you are to get married. Nothing.
Your 5 love languages.
No, none of that. Not in my generation. So we get married, which by the way, I had a huge wedding. Literally 600 people. 600 people.
You're kidding. I never knew that.
The church was packed.
Wow.
I had this big dress, it was huge. And my mother had a business, so we had a bridal flower shop in the town I grew up in, so everybody knew my mom. Plus, we went to the Spanish Pentecostal church there. My uncle, was a pastor there. Like, everybody knew me. So I had this huge wedding. Huge. Wow. And we get married. We go on a honeymoon. And now as I think back, so here I am on the honeymoon, and I'm so excited, and I'm a new bride. And he's sitting at the pool checking out other girls.
Oh, no. Plot twist. Plot twist.
Yes.
Did that happen before in the relationship?
Yes, but I didn't pay attention to it. So I want to say 4 or 5 months before, it might not have even been that long, we were engaged to get married. And one day he comes in, he says, I got to talk to you. I'm like, okay. And in comes his best friend's girlfriend. And they're both looking at each other. I'm like, okay. And she's there with her fiance. This is all a clue. So we're sitting down and he says, I just want to tell you, we had sex.
Your fiance and your friend's
and his best friend's girlfriend.
Oh no. Oh no.
And I remember I just got up from the table and I went outside. I was in Chicago at the time. And I remember I was running and just crying. I felt so betrayed.
Wow.
And they were like, it happened and we just want to tell you about it so that it's not a secret. It didn't happen while we were with you guys, but we both have felt really uncomfortable. And I looked at him like, but this is your best friend. Well, they really weren't together at the time. Listen, all of that was a clue, but I didn't want to see it. I didn't even have the capacity to say that's a clue and I should be looking at it.
Yeah, because it was direct, evidence. There was nothing. It was out there. You didn't have to discover it. They were telling you exactly that.
But what was interesting is because of my shame that I walked around with, I sort of took his shame as my shame.
Mm.
Like they did this whole, as believers, we have to forgive. And I remember I was so sad. And then a few weeks later, there's a wedding going on. And he's at the wedding and he was standing in the wedding. And I was going to go to the reception with him. I remember I was at his dad's house and I could look out the window because they lived right across from the church. And he was standing in the wedding with a mutual friend of ours. And I remember I'm standing there and I'm watching him. He leaves the wedding. They go out. They get in the car. I don't know what was going on. He was coming back. And I was like, am I stupid? Like, why am I sitting here? And he's up and down with this girl. Like, what is this really about? So I remember I confronted him and I had said, look, if this is over, this is over. But you need to tell me, I don't want to live in this enraged, jealous. So anyway, by the time he was done, he was very good. He was a great manipulator, very evil man, very evil, extremely evil. I didn't know what hit me. So I get married and literally like 6 months into this, he's getting up. No. We moved from Waukegan to Chicago. And I remember I woke up one day and I went into the living room and he's snorting a line of cocaine.
Like just guy. Right there in front
yes.
of and you didn't know this.
I did not know.
That he
So I remember I looked again. I have a theme of shame in my background. Mm-hmm. So I remember I went into shock and I went back into my bedroom. I didn't say anything until the next day. And I was like, what's going on? Oh my gosh. I had women calling me, telling me, hey, so-and-so, are you there? And I'm like, why are you calling for my husband? And they would like, oh, I'm just a friend. So then I would say, why are there girls calling the house? Mm-hmm. I was so young. And he would convince me that, talk about gaslighting.
What would he say?
He would say, that's not true. That's no one's calling over here. I go, yes, they're calling there. No, that's not true. I mean, anyway, there were a lot of things that he did. He was just a very evil person. Yeah. He was very narcissistic. I asked him one day, why did you marry me? And his response was, because I never thought I could get a good girl like you. Yeah, it was very cruel. And he was the first person that I told that I had been sexually abused. And he had the audacity to tell my family, oh, well, she wasn't really a virgin when we got married. Because in my family, that was like a big deal. And yeah. And I'm like, hello, you ran up and down with everybody. First of all, that wasn't even true. But my family believed him.
So they really liked him, or they were just kind of manipulated by him?
Let me tell you, he could not be more charming. Mm. A narcissistic man, you are the best boyfriends in the world. Too good to be true. Mm. They will love bomb you. They will tell you how beautiful you are, how great you are, how they know what they're doing. But they also see the neediness, they see. So I was very open with him. I was this is what happened to me. And he was like, okay, but it wasn't, now that I think about it, and when I would think about it, it wasn't from a nurturing, I want to care for you. It was more like I gave him all this ammunition and he was going to run with it. Yeah. And that's pretty much what he did.
Well, I have a question for you, which is really interesting. When I think about going back to where you met him, which is at church, right? He was a pastor, a leader in the church. And I feel like a lot of people, especially being raised in church, you were taught that, like find a man in the church, like don't find a man at the club, or don't find a man, like you want to find a man. But I feel like we tend to think that that's what's going to mask all the imperfections is them going to church. When in reality, it's the fruit, right? Because how you were
Yeah.
saying, you didn't see the fruit there, even though he had that position. Like, did you guys like pursue God together? Like, were there things that you guys were doing maybe in the beginning that fell
You know
through? Or
what? We did. We went to church together. I was like, oh my gosh, he's got fear of the Lord. But I didn't know what to look for in his character. I wasn't paying attention to how he treated his family. I wasn't paying attention to his history. I didn't look for the substance of who he is. And he was very good, a very good pretender.
Hmm. So it,
I,
like,
I
even convinced you.
oh yeah, I remember when, and you know, back then I wasn't that hard to convince because I was really neat. I was looking for somebody to love me. And I remember he had the kindest stepmom. She was a really sweet lady. And he was very abusive towards her because his father had divorced his mom.
Mhm.
And his mom had some mental health issues, but she wasn't a bad woman either. And I remember I would tell him, why are you like this? And I saw patterns of him being that way with all the women in his life. Like he was very rough on his mom, and he was also kind of cruel to his stepmom. And I mean, she would cook for him. She has to do this. He was a grown man. She would cook for him and leave his food in the oven. She was very, very kind woman. And it wasn't until I was there where I would tell him, you don't need to do that to her. You should like really be grateful that she cares about you.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
it was very, like I said, he must have seen me a mile away because I absolutely had no experience. I didn't know what was going on. And given my parents' um, struggles, I really didn't have that kind of relationship to be able to talk about, what constitutes a good man, what's a good relationship, none of that. So I became horribly depressed. And that first, like he would take me out to places and say, hey, if you look like her, I'd be home more often. If you did this, I would do that. And I tried to be everything he wanted me to be, and I couldn't.
It
I
wasn't
couldn't.
enough. It was
No.
never going
And
to
then
be
I
enough.
became very depressed and I gained a lot of weight. And oh my gosh, that was really the kiss of death because he was not going to have a fat woman by his side. So he made sure I knew it and reminded me
Wow.
and told me. So after about 3 years, I couldn't handle it anymore. I hit the gym and I was living by the Great Lakes Naval Base. So I don't know. I'm like, he's out all night. Let me see what this is about. I go into this bar by the Great Lakes Naval Base, and all these guys were sitting there. I was Chatty Cathy, and all of a sudden they're all like, hey, can we take you out? Can we this? Can we? And I was like, what? Really? You're interested in me? Um, and that's where I kind of got caught up in the cycle of, I can kind of make this work for me and I can get attention. Not healthy, very extremely unhealthy.
Mhm.
But it was feeling that, that emptiness that I felt. When I left him, and let me tell you, when I left him, he my first husband, he was having an affair with some woman and she had 2 kids. I didn't know any of this. I was like, what? So it was really time to go. And he also had a very heavy porn addiction. Heavy porn addiction.
That throughout the relationship you found out, or that was from.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. I
So
found
all of
out
this was like brought to light in the marriage.
in the marriage. I
Wow.
I saw it, but I kept it quiet. I was so ashamed. I was like, oh, what the, oh my gosh, what am I seeing? What? Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And I felt trapped. I felt, and I felt like, honestly, I felt like my life is about to be over because if I have to get divorced, I will be the first in my family and my life is going to be over. I'm doomed.
So that was something you just kept quiet. So nobody in your family knew that you guys were also having struggles?
Nope.
Wow. It's crazy when we're going through the darkest points of our life. Like the enemy really does want us to isolate and wants us to
Yeah.
keep quiet and keep it hidden. When in reality, what we need in that moment is to bring it to light. Like have the support of people. Tell someone that you trust. Like be able to share and maybe say, have someone else be like, hey, like I'm going through the same thing. Or yeah, I'm married and I have had those struggles too. What is something
I think
that
I'm sorry. I think my sister knew, but we didn't talk about it.
mm. So even for her,
So
it was not something that she can even give you advice about what to do or how to handle it.
she was younger, and I think we were having issues that we didn't even understand were going on. So yeah, it was a hard place. It was a very hard place.
Wow. And moving into
And
your
he took advantage of all of that. He just took advantage of everything
yeah.
with my family. With he I mean, he truly was just a very narcissistic. I'm sure he had a personality disorder, and yeah, it
And
was
how
bad.
did you get out of that finally? Like were you guys back and forth, like getting back together on
No,
and off?
no.
No, it was like one sweep.
I had this one thing when I found out that he had cheated and that he was living with another woman, and that was it for me. I'm like, no, no,
I'm not the
no,
one. I'm not
I'm
going to
not
be
the
the
one.
one.
I am not the one, not today. But my my trauma and all the pain that in my childhood and the abandonment and all of that really came out. And that's where I started to struggle with anxiety and severe depressions, and I became promiscuous for a while. I didn't know what to do with myself. Honestly, I did not know. Like, I just felt so completely lost, so hurt. And unfortunately, I mean, this is later on, I understood I was very codependent. I was looking for somebody to fill, you know, fill that emptiness that I felt inside of me. It had nothing to do with, there was no man that was going to be able to fulfill that. So it was really rough. So I was very young, and that was my first experience.
With a
Um,
relationship like that.
and then I felt very condemned after I got divorced by my family. Um, nobody really knew what was going on, and nobody really asked.
So kind of what happened after the relationship? So you went into kind of like there's two sides that people can go to, like either that they heal and they grow and like they learn,
Oh,
or
no, no,
the
no.
other side is what you're
Well,
talking
I
about.
came from such a strict home, I really couldn't completely rebel as I was growing up.
Hmm.
So this was my time to rebel, and I rebelled. But honestly, it was a very painful, and I'd met a guy, he was Middle Eastern. We were together for, I want to say, 4 years. He was very abusive and, very controlling. But because when I was single, not in a stable relationship, I would become promiscuous and do these things. I felt like I deserved somebody like him. Like I deserved to be punished. I deserved to be mistreated because there's definitely something wrong with me. Um, so I was there for a little while, and then that ended, and that was the coming and going kind of thing. And then my second husband that I married and divorced twice because I had to go through that mountain twice, or I should say around that mountain
All
twice.
right.
And that again was a relationship filled with a lot of toxic. He came from a lot of brokenness. And both of it was very difficult because we were both broken people. Um, I will say this though, in my brokenness, how can I say, he had two boys, two little boys, and that was very stabilizing for me because I really loved them. I wanted to have children. I couldn't have children on my own. I had two surgeries, and every time I would have surgery, he would leave me.
Mm.
And then the doctor would say, okay, this is the time you can get pregnant. But he would leave me, and then I couldn't have any children. So hence I never had any kids. And that is a loss. That is something I always wanted and something I've sort of had to make peace with. But it was a struggle and it was very abusive. It was always like I would end up with these men that I could never meet their expectations. I was never good enough. I was trying to be them. And then oh my gosh, I did so many stupid things. And
Like
I would,
what?
I
Share.
would date one guy. And I remember um, I had broken up with the guy that I was with for 3 years. And then I got a guy to rebound with because I didn't want to feel the pain of that breakup. So he broke up with me because I was Cocoa for Cocoa Puffs. I mean, I was like out of control.
Wild.
And I
Wild
remember
enough.
that breakup was like, you would have thought I dated him for 10 years.
Wow.
It was the most dramatic. It was so melodramatic that the guy was like, we only been dating for a few months, but I transferred really the pain that I had in this other relationship to this guy. So something funny was one day we were on the train and I had already started therapy. Um, and I remember, by the way, I have a sense of humor about these things.
Yeah.
Uh,
You can laugh about it
I'm
now.
on the train and I see him, right? And he gets scared.
Oh my
He looks
God.
at me and he's trying to get, this is in Chicago, he's trying to get to the back of the train and I'm going after him, right? So I go after him. I say, hey, how are you doing? He goes, I'm okay. I said, listen, can I talk to you for a minute? He goes, okay. I said, I really want to apologize to you. And he goes, for what? I said, you must have really gotten frightened when I broke up with you. I said, it was quite the performance. He goes, yeah, it was. Yeah, I thought maybe you needed to be on medication. I said, listen, I'm in counseling. I'm working through stuff. That really had nothing to do with you. But I just wanted to just kind of let thanks for really not letting me take it any further than that. Um, and yeah, you just kind of like, okay, that was one of my crazy moments.
Mm-hmm.
But you transfer and you get into this cycle of dysfunctional relationships can keep you very busy and stop you from dealing with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're so entertained with the drama and the back and forth and the not knowing and the confusion that you have. And like how you said, you were jumping around from different relationship to relationship, so you never truly healed. Like maybe what
No.
you were experiencing in one was trauma from the past one.
Well, and it was like I was even adding more trauma. I
Mm-hmm.
was I was talk about complicating things, but in the middle of, in the midst of all of that, it was learning, what not to do and seeing people so broken, me being broken. And the interesting part with my second relationship was the healthier I got, the more obnoxious he got. The more I would set boundaries, the more I was stronger in my faith, the worse he got. Until he finally had an affair and he left with somebody else finally. And then I spent some time alone. By that time, I had already had therapy. I started to understand relationships. I never even had a model to say, this is what a healthy relationship should look like. And that's why nowadays I am so passionate about really teaching young people about relationship, how to treat each other, what is a healthy marriage, how you should connect, how do you speak to each other. And yes, even if you come into it with hurts and pain, because we all do, God will use me and He will use you to be part of each other's healing process. But
Yeah.
it's not to be part of adding more insult to injury. I mean, no, that's not what a marriage is for.
Someone
When
has
I
to
think
break
that,
the cycle.
yes, when I met Raul, I was in a very healthy place. I actually liked myself. I loved my life. I had purpose. I was in a strong place. I was healthy. And he came into my life to share that with me. And interestingly enough, when we first got married, I was struggling with my feelings because I was so used to all this drama and he wasn't having it.
Mm.
So, of course, we're a blended family. So he had children and there were some issues there. But as far as him and I, it wasn't like that. And we really, like, he was set on, we're going to make this work. And through just counseling and caring for each other, he's my best friend.
No.
God has used him to heal those hurt areas of relationship in my life. But at the same time, God has used me to support him and to love him. And I have a framework and a foundation of, I know if something were to ever happen, God forbid, but I know like he loves me and I love him. And we have honored God in the way we have had this marriage.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You guys are really relationship goals. You really are. And just you sharing it, it's like hopeful because I feel like when you're like in my age, in my 20s, like you kind of think that like, if I, don't make it work with this person, or I've seen friends that like they kind of are like, well, like I'm almost getting to 30, like, I need to find someone, and they just kind of want to just figure that out. But it's like seeing how even through the path that you went through of like having the divorce and going against like what people would say, you know what I mean? Like meaning like people were telling you like, what do you mean you're getting a divorce? Like you're going against the norms, but like you still were
Yes.
able to heal and find someone that you could have that, I don't know if this relates to you, but all the Hallmark movies, that all have like the Prince Charming, that he like goes
Yeah.
to a small town.
Yeah.
And so my mom loves watching those movies. Like she always loves
So do
watching them.
I.
Yeah, all of us. But something that she said the other day that I was like, wow, like that's really interesting. She's like, a lot of people say, they're like, oh, that's not real. Like we know how it's going to happen. She's like, but why can't we see that relationship and be like, isn't that what a healthy relationship looks like? Like we're so used to seeing, like having the perception of what a toxic relationship looks like. But even though, yes, it is fantasy and not everything is peachy, but it is possible to end in a good place, have a happy ending with someone. Like it's not
Yeah.
like, we should have a horrible ending towards the end. So kind of like how you're saying, like, even though, yes, you guys have had struggles, but overall, like you guys are in a healthy place. Like you genuinely feel happy with the person.
And
So
part of this is you knowing yourself and having the appropriate expectations in a relationship. But you need to read books, you need to get educated, you need to know yourself. What's important to you? What are your values? Where do you want to be 10 years from now? Is he there? Is he at that same place? You don't have to be exactly the same. Sometimes people are completely opposite and yet they very much love each other. Relationships have their own culture, not just of the culture that we think of in the world, but you create your own culture in your relationship. My sister told me a long time ago, marriage, you get an empty box. You got to figure out what you're going to fill it with. You can fill it with disagreements, getting my way, or you can say, you know what, we're going to make this work. And there are days where you may not have that passionate feeling, but there's a commitment and there's a security in that that you want to provide. I always tell Raul, I always ask him, do you feel safe? He's like, yes. And for me, not feeling safe for so long, that's huge for me. I say, I absolutely feel safe with you. And then there's a bigger aspect of in my faith walk to say, Lord, I am so grateful for this wonderful man, for my husband, but he is not my identity. My identity comes from the Lord, and that is where I am at. I share the love that God gives me to my husband. I ask him for passion for him and for love for him. But I honor God in the way that we treat each other. And I've always said, I don't want to treat anybody better than my husband. I don't be nicer to other people. And no, you cannot, that is the person, that's your person. And yeah, we have our disagreements
Yeah.
and we do that, but we also have a framework not to cause each other soul wounds. But if you don't have that, if you come from a situation where there are some family of origin issues that you need to heal from, you got to take care of that because it's going to come out in your relationship or you're going to attract the wrong kinds of guys.
Mm. What's something that in those moments of, in your 20s, trying to find, like, you really did want to have a healthy relationship, and I feel like that's why you even stayed in those relationships, because you just wanted to make it work. Like, what are tips that you give to girls, like in relationships, or like things that they should kind of look for, and things that are like no's, like kind of like.
Well, I think the first thing, like I said, is you have to get educated on what is a healthy relationship. What should it look like? For example, does he respect your no? When you say no, does he respect it? Or does he spend a day or 2 days convincing you and getting you to the yes that he wanted? Does he respect your family? Does he, is he emotionally available? Can he be empathic? Um, can he connect with you in a way that you feel safe? Is he consistent? Is his yes, yes, and his no, no? Or is he lazy? Does he have goals, or are you the one that's going to be working in this relationship and he's just going to support you? Um, there's a lot of aspects after you get past the stage of I love you and courting and things start to calm down, then you begin to look at those things and say, okay, do you have what it takes? Is this what I want?
Mhm.
Or do I feel obligated in this relationship? Um, is he controlling? Am I changing? Am I negotiating the person that I want to be for this person? So and if you don't know yourself, I don't know what I want. Okay, step back. Let's spend a little time on you getting to know yourself because nobody stays the same in a marriage. People well, you're not who I married. No, neither are you. Because we all grow.
And you should change. Maybe we
Yes.
hope it's good change though, not bad
Yes.
change, but we all evolve. Yeah.
But to have those basic of having somebody who respects you, who honors you, that you can say, hey, I'm going to be there at 7 o'clock. He's going to be there at 7 o'clock. You know why? Because he values you. If you say, no, I don't want to do that. Okay. And that's a big one for me. I always tell them, okay, start to say no and let's see what happens. And you're going to start, especially if there's a personality defect, you're going to start to see that right away to where, well, I don't really say no because I usually just do what he wants to do. Step
Mm.
back and begin to look at that. Look at the character. Is this person the kind of person that commits? If he tells you he doesn't commit, believe him.
Mm. What if he
That's
says,
uh-huh.
what if he says, I'm not ready like now, or, oh, well, until this changes, then I will. Does that mean that it's still the same? It's a no?
I think that that is very, very evasive. If you say, look, we need to work on this, we need to work on this together, and this is the goal that I want to get to, but this is an issue of conflict. But to tell somebody, hey, if you don't, you need to work on that, and yeah, when you change that, then we can sit down and talk. What do you hear? First of all, you're the problem. There's no we there. And there's something wrong with you when you fix it. And I promise you, when somebody starts to do that, the line keeps moving and keeps changing. There's always going to be something that you have to fix. I know, because I remember one time in my previous relationships, I'm very outgoing. I care. I genuinely care about
Very
people.
passionate. I
Yes.
love it.
And I care about people. So when I used to go out and I would have conversations, I love interesting conversations. I enjoy reading. I like intelligent people. And don't misunderstand me. I don't think just because you're educated, you're intelligent. I think there are people that are very deep thinkers that never went to college. But I just enjoy people. I like to listen to their stories, and everyone has one. So then I would get in the car and my husband would say, okay, you talk too much. Why do you have to be so like into all these people? Well, that wasn't appropriate. And after a while, I would just go out and just be quiet. So I remember when I started going out with Raul, I was sitting in the car and I would wait for him to like
Punish
tell me
you
all
in a
that.
way.
And I know one time I said, don't you think I talk too much? He goes, no. He goes, what are you talking about? So as I explained all that to him, he said, babe, I know you. I know your heart. I know the kind of person that you are. You go into a room, you're there, you care for people, you enjoy their stories, people talk to you. Well, how am I going to get in the way of that? So I'm not jealous of that. I'm not like, no, you do you.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay.
Wow, that's when you knew like those are the differences that you found, because you weren't
Yes.
trying to change yourself, because that's
No.
something else. It's like I feel like there's some things that we can change about us that are toxic or that are wrong, like, you know what I mean, personal things that we can change. But if it's about who
Yes.
you are as an individual, like you being, for example, outgoing, or you liking to be adventurous, or you like certain things about just personality more, I would say personality versus character. That's always, the thing.
Yes.
You can't, if someone feels like you have to stop being yourself, that's when you're like, wait a second. Or also, like, are they doing the same thing? Like, if you were to tell them like, hey, this, for example, like, and do they actually put the effort into being like, oh, that's true, or I didn't realize that, if it's something that they can work on? Or is it always just like, you need to
Yes.
change this, you need to work on this? So kind of now in a healthy relationship that you are in, like, what are things that you continuously do to keep it, in a healthy state? Because
Well, I practice what I preach.
mm-hmm.
I'm, trained in Gottman, and that Gottman is they do couples therapy, and they're kind of the gurus of how to have an effective relationship. And they've trained, I mean, thousands of clinicians to do that work. But a lot of the stuff that they talk about, I've implemented. For example, the way we talk to each other. Uh, we take time to connect. Raul's language, his love language is quality time, as is mine. So it's very important for us to spend time together. Um, there is a level of mutual respect. Like we have really good conversations, but he is also funny. Like he is so
The funny
funny.
guy.
He is a funny guy, and he's quiet, he's conservative, he's a retired law enforcement, but he's hilarious, and he won't do it in front of people. so it's just for me. But he cracks me up, and I can be upset, I can be whatever, and he will start just making me laugh. That sometimes when he's not around, I'll remember something he said or whatever, and I'll text him, you know what, this was hilarious, I just remembered.
Mhm.
But try to also be very careful about how I speak to him. um he is not one that will receive things well if I come in a very aggressive way or too assertive. That he's going to back up. And so it's me learning how to communicate in a way that's effective. But we spend a lot of quality time together. We text each other. We say thank you. We are courteous to each other. If I tell Raul, wow, you know, I would like to get this done or that done, he gets stuff done around the house. Um, he's very good about that, which
You
really is
love
amazing.
it.
Yes, I do. I
A
do. 'Cause
handyman.
I like a nice house. Yes. So he's very handy, but he's also very kind. And I have gone out of my way, like, to know his heart. In the beginning, it was hard because Raul was not much of a talker, but little by little, and like I said, he's truly my best friend. Like, we don't just love each other, we like each other. So our culture, we have created a culture of mutual respect, commitment. We love each other's families. Um, and we make sure that we are paying attention to each other. So if too many weeks go by and he's working a lot, I'm working a lot, we will sit and regroup. And then we've created routines in our life, like who's going to go get the coffee in the morning. Um, if he's hungry later in the day, we'll stop everything and we'll sit down and we'll try to have a meal together. So it's really very intentional on us connecting.
Mhm. But that's based on you expressing what your needs were, meaning like if
Yeah.
your quality time, that's something. And I heard you say previously in the toxic relationship that you were in, you felt so needy, like you felt like that was like a neediness of like wanting so much. And like, so now it's more out of a place of, because that's what I need and that's how I feel loved, but that person reciprocates what you need. It's not like out
Yeah.
of like, oh, you need, oh, here we go. So that's interesting to see. When I heard that, I was like, wow, that's interesting, like just knowing the differences.
And sometimes what happens is when you're needy, you want this person to love you so bad, you start to test them. You don't even ask for what you want. He should know. He should know if he really loves me. Because you're coming at this from a place of not you verbalizing and saying, hey, look, this is really important to me. And, I'd like for you to take some time. Let's talk about this. No, when you're needy, you're sitting there like a starved child, hungry for food. Is anybody going to feed me? So you don't ask for what you want. You don't even know what you want. You just know you want him to love you, and he doesn't know, he's not doing it right. So you start almost getting to a place of please love me, and it really puts everybody at a disadvantage.
Yeah. Yeah. And until you finally feel like whatever void you feel, and knowing that it's not going to come from that person, you know what I mean? And you're whole as an individual, that's when it doesn't come from a place of starvation because you feel like you need someone to love you. Um, Thank you so much, Maria, for sharing your story and just sharing hope, you know what I mean, for those people that have gone through, toxic relationships, or maybe they didn't even know it was going to be toxic in the beginning, but just seeing how until you finally became whole yourself, that you were healed, you were in a good place, not in a place of needing someone else. You were like completely whole, and you're like, if I stay single, in a way, like I'm okay. And I know in conversations with you that came about that the real time in singleness, like sometimes you need that time to regroup, to figure out what you want,
Yes,
to figure
very
out who
important.
you are. instead of always trying to figure out like, okay, when am I going to get married? When am I going to find the person? And it's like in that time that you're not seeking that, that's when that person comes, as much as people say.
Yes. And I don't want to forget this, because we talked about godly men. Raul was not raised in the church. Raul came to know the Lord pretty much at the same time that we met. But Raul has such a fear of the Lord and such a respect that in our moments of difficulty, in our moments of struggle, it is the place that we go to, and we still go to, that we will grab our, hold hands and say, this is bigger than us. We need to pray about it. And that's where we go. We have also together grown in our faith, in our knowledge of the Word of God, in, fellowshipping and in growing with other healthy couples. And even sometimes with couples that are not so healthy, but that they can see a model. I mean, I certainly hope so. A model of this is what God can do in a relationship. And this is what a healthy relationship should look like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're that hope for those couples. And even to me, again, I really do look up to you, and hashtag couple goals. No, but thank you so much. And I really hope all of you guys listening really took away some stuff, and even not letting either shame or the past dictate how your future will be. That's number one. And just knowing yourself and really truly coming to the place of loving yourself. And from that love that you have, you are able to understand the love and give the love instead of needing that love from someone else. So I hope, stay tuned for the next episode that we will have. And thank you so much, Maria, once again.
Thank you, Elizabeth.